Amy Cooper's confrontation with Chris Cooper in a New York City park made headlines for several things, including Amy's use of the police as a fear tactic. She lost her job and her dog as a result of her actions against Chris Cooper.
But Christian Cooper thinks the response went a bit far. He told the New York Times, quote, "I'm not excusing the racism, but I don't know if her life needs to be torn apart." Funky academic himself, Irami Osei-Frimpong, joins us now via Skype to share his perspective. I'm sure he has no thoughts on all of this whatsoever.
Yeah, I have a few things to say. Now, I want to give a trigger warning to all the people in your audience because I don't want people to be offended by what they're going to be offended by what I say, but I don't want them to be like,
don't give a trigger warning. Just go for it.
Just go at it, Irami.
Right,
go ahead.
So I know, Crystal, you're a feminist, and I actually don't have a problem with feminists as long as there aren't too many in the room when I'm trying to get justice work done, because I have a feeling that there's something anti-labor and racial justice about the entire women's empowerment movement. And I think it's actually crystallized very well in the scene we saw with Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper in New York.
So explain what you mean by that. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is if we're going to get serious about labor and racial justice in the United States, we have to understand that that's going to go through, we're going to have to pick sides, and we have to be prepared for the fact that Emily's List will be on the wrong side. We have to be prepared for the fact that even Planned Parenthood
I'm not an Emily's List feminist, by the way.
So why are they going to... Let's draw this out, because you once said in one of your videos that I watched and laughed at was that any left movement is only as strong as its most fragile white woman. And I suspect that's what you're getting at here. So what did you mean by that?
So the way we've understood gender and the way gender has emerged is actually it's a colonial artifact that is where women proved that they could be as effective and actually more effective colonists and controllers of the savage population as white men. That's what the suffragists, except for like a few Grimke sisters and Lydia Marie Child, were arguing that the white race needs women to do their job as women because they could be just as effective colonists and just as effective subjectors of the savage populations as white men. And you shouldn't segregate women from their work in civilizing the world. And you have to understand that this is deep. This is why you have so many, white teachers who are married to white cops, because it's kind of all that same gender ideology that we haven't exactly gotten rid of. Whereas there are white men and white women, and then ungendered savages, which is us and the working poor, which is why there's going to be something that's anti-working poor, anti-black in any serious pro-gender movement, because gender was construed as properly a class ideology. To be a woman, to be a real man, is to be quite a little bit fancy. And we haven't really taken that seriously. So when people assert their rights as women and assert their rights as men, it's going to come with an elitist or classist veneer, and
so
actually not just veneer.
Connect that directly to Amy Cooper, who went to a good school, probably used to more or less getting her way in the world, et cetera, et cetera. Take us into the dynamics in that incident.
All right, so you have to, first of all, Amy Cooper was fired. I'm not sure that's the right move, because we have to think, is Amy Cooper an anomaly? Is she just a bad actor, or do we turn out Amy Coopers? And I take that, Sagar, what do you think? Is Amy Cooper an anomaly, like a bad actor who needs to be policed for her bad actions?
I think she is perfectly emblematic of Manhattan white liberalism.
What about you, Crystal? Is Amy Cooper like a bad actor, or is she like, half your friends?
Yeah, same.
Right. Okay, so I too think that we turn out Amy Coopers the way that Iowa grows corn. Like, she's just the normal, some people actually have their daughters want to aspire to be Amy Cooper. She is a Templeton VP with a University of Chicago degree. To some people, that seems like that's what you want for your daughter. And I see her as the normal white supremacist. I'm not even sure that she has ever actually done this before. I'm not convinced she has done this before. I am convinced that she knew how to do it. And it did take a lot of thinking to, drum up the tears and the hysteria and sick the cops on a black guy. But I think a lot of white women know how to sick the cops on a black guy in a pinch. And they don't even know they know it. They just can do it. And that's that's something we need to kind of excavate. And we have to understand that when women are marching in the streets for empowerment and when women are shooting for rights, are they really shooting to give up that power? Because that is a peculiar kind of power that not everybody has in these United States. I don't think a white guy could have done that. I don't think, and that's a peculiar kind of vulnerability that only a black man is in that way, right? So
you're touching a real third rail here, Irami.
Yeah, are they really advocating to surrender that power? And let's be honest, when Elizabeth Warren called Bernie, disclosed that Bernie said that, Bernie Sanders said that a woman can't be president, and pretty much sicked the media on him. Something that anyone who actually knows Bernie finds a little bit hard to believe that he said, especially considering that Bernie Sanders endorsed Jesse Jackson in 1988 and then got slapped for the trouble, and Jackson pretty much didn't have a chance to win, and delivered delegates to Jackson. And so there's nothing about Bernie that says that he would have said that. There's a lot about Elizabeth Warren that says that she kind of has a hard time with the truth when the lie is good for her personal interest. And yet we took the accusation as not only credible, we just assumed that she was right and that Bernie said it because Bernie didn't have a videotape. So the question is what Amy Cooper did to Chris, the birdwatcher, that much different than what Elizabeth Warren did to Bernie? And are we really prepared to actually call these people to the mat for that kind of entitlement? Are we willing to actually call that gender power, number one? Because there was still dual sicking going on, and having been sicked on by quite a few white women, that's one of the things they do. That's a move. They sick people on people. And so the plausible deniability on the cops for shooting, because that's what was going to happen. That's the violence she was calling for shooting Chris the birdwatcher, and there's plausible deniability for Amy Cooper for saying, well, I just got mad and called the cops. What did I do wrong? And this ends with a black guy dead. And this is something that black guys just know, which is why a lot of us are terrified of white women, because they're terrifying. If you're Bernie Sanders,
1 sec, Irami. Last question here from you.
One thing, sorry, we have a hard out today, but one thing that Adolph Reed Jr. pointed out to us, Professor Reed, is that even in that moment when she is using this very overt white privilege and clearly racist dynamic, she's taking pains to say African American, the politically correct term in that moment. What did you make of that dynamic?
Well, it means that, change. I like being called black, and it means that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you're just an uppity Negro who doesn't know your place. And that's what's at stake. Can you get in the way of a white woman who wants what she wants? Could Bernie Sanders, could Chris Berger, doesn't matter what rights, what's truth. Can you get in the way of a white woman who wants what she wants? Do you have rights in that situation?
So
or are rights just something that can be used against you for somebody else's privilege?
Last question here that we have to keep tight, which is that at the same time, though, you find yourself in a political coalition with a lot of the people that you're talking about here. So how is somebody like you in your politics supposed to win?
No, I'm not in a political coalition with them. We have to. They think they're allies, but I know who my enemies are. I don't get confused about this. So we have to actually we have to go at the cultural institutions that create the Amy Coopers, right? We have to go at the families, the churches, the schools that create Amy Coopers and normalize them and understand that that's the task, that's the work. The autopsy isn't a matter of figuring out where Amy Cooper works and then firing her. It's figuring out the real responsible work is figuring out what school she went to, what churches, her family structures. Look, in the 70s, we had the Moynihan Report. The Moynihan Report was the black family, a case for national action. We have a problem with the white family. And this comes out very clearly in Dreamer Moon's article, White Enculturation, where pretty much it's the family that teaches you how to white. And then everybody else kind of accommodates you because they're scared of white people. And so unless you actually go at the white family and figuring out the norms that structure the white family against black people, then you're not actually going to do the work.
I think this is something we're going to have to bring you back.
For Crystal, actually.
Oh boy,
Crystal. All right. So Crystal,
maybe.
What how old were you when you started considering yourself a feminist?
That's a good question. Probably, I didn't have a political upbringing, so I didn't really think about it too hard. Probably in college sometime.
So like 21, 19, 20, 20.
Somewhere
So
in there,
how
yeah.
old were you when you considered yourself like someone who seriously like wanted to foment like a popular uprising of like working class people in America?
That would be more recent. You know,
That
a lot
was
of
a real problem, and that was the work.
Yeah, that would be in the last couple of years.
All right, so sometime between, I'll tell you, so between 20 and, I don't know, however old you are now, but pretty much the 2000s and most of 2000 teens, you were a problem for my justice. Like the feminist who doesn't have a class conscience, like that's actually a problem for my justice because you're not actually concerned with like nannies and like people who work for a living, and you don't see the justice problem there.
Right.
Like,
so it's
that,
Irami, it's a very important point. And I know we literally have to do this every time. I'm very sorry. You will come back. You will make your points.
You always
They are
make us think,
that
Irami.
window is a dangerous window.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Everybody take that to heart. Thank you, Irami. Appreciate you joining
Thanks,
us.
Irami. Everybody go sub to his channel, Funky Academic. Great to see you, sir. We'll have more rising for you after this.